Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar, where we're joined by members of Citi to talk about transitioning from the military into Citi. Just to introduce myself, my name is Lisa Jones. I'm one of the career consultants here at the Officers Association. My background is that when I left the Army, I went into investment banking before joining the OA in 2012. But without further ado, I'll pass you over to the team from Citi. We're very fortunate to be joined this evening by Jack Pyle, who's a former Army officer, currently on the programme, the Citi programme at the moment, but also Lucy Griffiths and Jessica Plant from their HR team. So over to you guys. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Griffiths, and I'm joined here with Jack and Jessica, as Lisa said. Jessica and I are in the graduate recruitment team, so we are responsible for the recruitment of the graduate programmes here at Citi. So we'll be speaking to you a little bit later on about some tips for your applications if you want to apply, and also an insight day that we've got later on in August. But before we start with that, I'm going to hand you over to Jack, who's going to introduce himself and talk to you a little bit about his journey to Citi.
Thank you very much. As we heard, my name is Jack Pyle. I joined the scheme in February this year. Beforehand, winding the clock back a bit, I was at Durham University, where I studied for a Master's in Engineering. I graduated in 2012, going straight on to Sandhurst in the September of that year. I commissioned in 2013 into the Lifeguards and started off firstly as an armoured reconnaissance troop leader at the Household Cavalry Regiment in Windsor. After that, I spent a short time at the Royal Armoured Corps Training Regiment as a training troop leader, and finished off my time as the Lifeguard second in command at the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. So a little over 5 years I spent in the Army, and a pretty varied time. I went on a number of sort of overseas exercises, but never actually deployed. And I think that was a concern I have, and if you've got any questions about that sort of thing and later, feel free to ask. I basically reached a crossroads in my Army career. I got the sort of the fun jobs out of the way, and I had probably 3 to 4 years worth of staff work ahead of me, and I took that as a perfect opportunity to get out and start on a new career while I was still young enough and enthusiastic enough to get stuck into that. So firstly, I'll just cover a few points on how I got myself ready to transition into the financial world. And I know from experience, obviously, it can be quite a daunting process. And just as the Army is full of abbreviations and acronyms and all sorts, the financial world is no different and can be filled with just the same. And the first point I've got there is using your time wisely. I know everyone in the Army works very hard, but you've got more time now than you will have at a later stage. One, because your final day in the Army will be upon you before you know it, and two, because as soon as you get into the life in a bank, you'll soon realise that your working day gets a lot longer. So actually, whilst you've got a bit of time in the Army, whether you're stuck on orderly officer over the weekend or something, make sure you make the most of it. In terms of getting to grips with the fundamentals of finance, I studied the IMC, the Investment Management Certificate. It's really an asset management certificate. I did that using my standard learning credits in the Army. So I know you can use your enhanced learning credits as well for that. So I put a little bit of money towards it, but I got the Army to pay for most of that training. And actually, in terms of the real fundamentals, it's a really good thing to do. and in terms of a CV enhancer and something to actually show that you are truly interested in moving into finance, it's also a really great thing to do. The few other things that I've put down, there's a open Yale course on financial markets. It's free to go and watch. There's about 20 hour-long lectures on there, and again, a really good way to get to grips with some of the fundamentals. And then there's a couple of books I've put on the slide, The Money Machine and The Financial Bestiary, two really good books for getting an idea about how the entire system works and the various different entities within the financial world and how they interact with each other. In terms of keeping up with the news, BBC Radio 5 has a brilliant programme on. It's 45 minutes every morning. It does air at 5 o'clock, so unless, like me, you're serving at the House of Cavalry Mounted Regiment and down in the stables at that time, I'm sure most of you guys will probably be downloading the podcast as opposed to listening to it live. But it's a really good way to keep up with financial news. The Economist, again, I'm sure most people's messes out there will have subscriptions to it, but just get to grips with that and read that. And then the Financial Times. It is incredibly daunting. I think I still now find it a pretty daunting newspaper to read. You don't need to buy it every day. Don't expect to know everything that they're talking about in day one. But what I would do is look at the markets and companies sections. Buy it once a week, read it as thoroughly as you can, highlighting anything you don't understand. Investopedia is a really good resource for looking up anything that you don't quite know or you haven't quite got. So yeah, no need to read the Financial Times every day. No one expects you to know it cover to cover, but it's just a good way to start getting your head around things. And actually, reading the Financial Times, reading the news, you'll get an idea of the sorts of stories which interest you and the sorts of areas of finance you might want to go into. If you're interested by the macro stuff, the sort of the global geopolitical stories, you might want to go into FX or rates. If actually it's the micro side of things, the companies that interest you, you might want to be thinking of going into equities or actually, asset management, that sort of thing. So try and make yourself think whilst you're doing your research, which parts of finance are starting to interest you. And the last point there, network. And I think every single person will say it to you. Anyone who you get any sort of advice about leaving the army and going into any profession, networking is the most important thing. Personally, I absolutely hate it. I find nothing more awkward than sitting down with someone you've never really met and you don't really know why you're talking to them or what you're hoping to achieve, but you just have to force your way through it. The ex-military network out there is fantastic, and I know the Officers Association has a database of ex-military people working in various different streams of life, and they are always incredibly accommodating, and all it takes is just reaching out to them, and they'll always give, as a rule of thumb, I didn't have a single person not offering me at least half an hour of their time for a chat about their experiences and their job. On that note, be open-minded about who you're going to see. You might be dead set on working in an investment banking division within the financial world, but chat to someone who's working in asset management, chat to a trader, chat to someone who works in compliance or operations. One, because until you've spoken to them, you'll never know exactly what they do on a day-to-day basis. But secondly, this is the start of you actually building your network within the financial world. And it might be that someone you chat to in asset management is a client of yours 12 months down the road. So the broader the network you build at this stage, the better you will be in the long term. And it goes without saying, have notes. Take notes. when you go to these meetings, because like I'm sure the moment you walk out, if you're anything like me, you would have forgotten all the great points that you've been told. I'd go with a name. It doesn't matter how broad the aim is, but just go with a name, and that'll at least make the person you're meeting feel like the both of you are going to get something out of it, rather than just meandering through sort of aimless discussions. Keep in touch with those people that you're meeting. As I said before, that network it could prove to be invaluable in years to come. Keep in touch. I'm sure they'll be interested to find out how you're getting on and where you've got to. So make sure you do that. And finally, ask for introductions. The network's great, but the network really comes into its own when you get one person to introduce you to the next. And try and come away from each meeting you have, each coffee you go out for, with at least one other person you can chat to. That person doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's ex-military, but someone who's worked with ex-military, or someone who's got a relationship with someone who's ex-military. So definitely, try and come away from any discussions with introductions to other people. So I'll come on now to my experience of the Citi programme. And I think before I go on to that, I'll say why I was attracted to Citi in particular when I was looking at the various different institutions that have these military schemes. And for me, Citi offered me the chance to work in a front office role in the revenue generating areas of the bank. But also gave us the opportunity to have a really comprehensive and structured training program. I'll just cover a little bit about that first. So I'm sure the structure of the program will be covered in more detail later. But the first 6 weeks you arrive at the bank. Obviously, it's a very steep learning curve, but Citi from the start is investing a serious amount of resources and time into your training. You're not sort of unleashed upon the trading floor on day one. It's a very, very comprehensive trading program. They're great instructors. The training is delivered by external instructors. So, if you're being taught about trading, you're being taught about trading by someone who's been a trader for 15 or 20 years. If you're being taught about how you interact with clients, the chances are they've got a client who's sitting in front of you who's had interactions with Citi for the last 10, 15 years. So the resources that get thrown at you at that early stage are really fantastic. I think something that I was warned about, so it didn't quite take me by surprise, but you are joining with a cohort of graduates. It's not just military people on the scheme. There's a few sort of elite athletes who join you, but it's predominantly graduates. So they are inevitably slightly younger than you are. The majority have probably come off internships probably this summer. They're probably going to be here at the moment as I speak, if you're joining next year. They would have done spring weeks and they would have had far more exposure to the financial world than you will. Don't be fooled by that. Just because they've sat on a desk for 6 weeks, they know their way around the building, they've got a friend who's working on a particular desk, doesn't mean that they are sort of the best person who's ever been on the scheme. And you'll probably feel on day one that you're totally out of your depth. But actually, by the time you get through the program, you'll realize that if you keep up with the learning curve, which is steep but achievable, you will have more than caught up with them at the end of those first 6 weeks. So don't be fooled by that. I say there, it's a meritocracy, and I think in the financial world, as I'd hope the army is, it is a pure meritocracy. So you turn up with a blank canvas. And it's your reputation to forge from that point on. If you put in the hard work, if you produce great content, if you produce great reports throughout your training and throughout your time on the desk, you're rewarded for it. And I think that's a real joy to be a part of that environment. And the other thing that is involved in that first few weeks are the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investment exams. So that's, for me, going into the markets division. They are the regulatory exams, and I'm sure it's the same for the other divisions that you go into. They get them out of the way straight away, so you can focus when you actually get into the meat of the scheme. You can focus on actually getting on with the desk and not worrying about having to revise for exams. So they come thick and fast, and you have about 3 exams over the space of 5 days. But at least you get them out of the way early on. Another thing, I suppose, that took me by surprise is when I first started, I didn't quite understand the breadth and depth of roles that are available in the financial world. And just, I say on the slide, just on my scheme, which is markets and security services, so sales and trading and structuring. So just on my scheme, when I joined, there were 100 different desks who are actively searching for analysts to join their desk. So that's by no means an exhaustive list of the desks that are available. That more will come as time passes. So there's 100 different roles available, and I think for me it's a bit like when you turn up at Sandhurst, or when you first start looking at the army. You sort of go through the process of you want to join the army, and then you might say you want to join the infantry, and you might say, oh, I want to join this armoured infantry regiment, and you realise that every time you sort of take another step further down, there are more and more roles, more granularity to what is available. So I'm sure when I was at the stage where most of you guys are now, I was very much, I want to join Citi, or I want to join finance, just like I want to join the army is how I started off. But you'll soon realise quite the array of jobs that are available, and actually don't feel like you need to know every single job before you turn up. No one would have expected you on day one of Sandhurst to know exactly what every single different arm and service within the army does. So equally, don't expect to know what every single desk does. So when I write down there the 3 rotations, the 2 I've already done, and the 3rd which I'm just about to start, I don't expect anyone to know anything about any of those rotations, but it just gives you a bit of an idea about quite how specialised some of the roles are, but actually no one on day one expects you to know anything specialised about those roles. So don't be daunted by the technical sounding terms or anything like that when you first arrive. When you start rotating around the desk, they will expect a lot from you. They'll expect you to pick up things quickly, but none of them will expect you to know anything on day one. You're there for the first few weeks just to ask every single question you have. Just like the army, you can get things wrong once. You can ask the question twice, but once they've told you twice the same thing, I'm sure they'll lose patience. But actually, the people working on the desks, particularly at the sort of the vice president level, so the guys who have been around for 6 or 7 years, they generally, in my experience, have a huge amount of time to give to the analysts coming through, and analysts have a huge amount to learn from them. So expect to be really supported on the desks as you come through. Expect to have some really interesting work. It's a very fast-paced environment, no matter what part of markets or what part of the bank you're in. Everything can change in a day, no matter how much you try and avoid it. But you will deal with some very interesting and high-profile clients. And Coming to the analyst program slightly older than the average graduate, I've found that desks have been far more willing to take me out on client meetings, to get me on the phone, listening in on conversations, and actually, if you're a little bit older, a little bit more mature, expect that you will be pushed along, and a little bit more from that respect will be asked of you. And the last thing I'll cover here is the Citi Salutes network, which is the network of ex-military or individuals who have got a relationship with the military or reservists currently serving who work at Citi. There's a really wide network of people at Citi. And you're actively encouraged to find mentors. So not necessarily those, they don't have to be working within your particular team or your particular area of the bank. But it's great to have a mentor who's gone through the transitional program before you. So you're actively encouraged to go and seek out a mentor, which is a really great thing that I think we've got here. And finally, there are the sort of the social events where the ex-military people all get together. I know for me, it was about a month or so before we started. There was a big ex-military dinner at the Cavalry and Guards Club, where all the Citi employees who had any association with the military were all invited along for a big glorified mess dinner. And actually, that for me sort of epitomised what the Citi Salutes network is here, and the fact that before I even turned up, they were all wanting to introduce themselves to me and allow me to get to know them. So when I did arrive, I had that established network there to support me on day one. I think I've spoken for about 20 minutes now, so I'll hand over to some of the colleagues here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jack. So hi, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Lucy, and I'm just going to talk you through briefly the graduate programs we offer here at Citi. So we have 9 graduate programs in total. The ones highlighted there in yellow are the ones that Citi specifically recruits ex-military and reservists into, and we have headcount allocated for these for ex-military personnel for these 4 business areas. So that's corporate banking, investment banking, markets and security services, which Jack is on the program now, and also private banking. So all 4 of these programs are rotational programs, and they are anything from 2 years to 2.5, 20 months. So all 4 of those programs we recruit specifically ex-military personnel, and the other programs we do also, we encourage applications as well for those, should you wish or should you be interested. Okay, so once you've figured out maybe which business area you mainly be interested in, may it be corporate banking, markets, IB, private banking, you can find out more on our website, which is oncampus.citi.com. Read all about which business area you think would, maybe be best fit for you, best fit for your skill set. And once you've decided, you can apply online. You'll need to upload a CV and a cover letter, which I'll go into detail a little bit further on. And so the applications open for all of our programs in the first week of September, and we really encourage applications, as soon as possible, as we recruit on a rolling basis. So applications may be open until December, but we'll start looking at them from September. So we always advise that you apply as early as possible. So the recruitment process here at Citi is that you apply online, you submit your CV and your cover letter with your application. You'll then receive an online numerical test or logical test, depending on which business area you're applying to. If you pass this test, you'll then be invited to a telephone interview, which is the first round of interviews. If you're successful after this interview, you'll then be invited to an assessment centre. Now, this assessment centre, I think, often can be daunting to candidates, but it's a very relaxing day. In terms of assessment centres, the maximum amount of candidates on any one day will be 7, so it's a very kind of small and not too daunting, I think, of a day. So the assessment centre is comprised of a competency interview, a technical interview, a case study presentation where you'll be given a case study brief and have to present on this brief that you're given. You'll then do a group exercise to round off the day, and there'll also be a short numerical test as well, just to verify your initial online test. So that's the assessment day, and then if you're successful, you'll have your offer, and then onboarding happens after that. So it's not too long of a process. Programs start either in July or August, depending on which business area you've applied for, or sometimes we have, especially markets, there is an intake in January or February as well. Okay, so I'll just give you a little overview of what we're looking for from a candidate applying for the program. So to be eligible for the program, you'll need either predicted or achieved 2-1 in any degree discipline. We don't really specify what degree discipline you need, just any degree from any university. You'll need to show kind of a general and a genuine interest for financial services and Citi in particular as well, along with a strong an interest and knowledge for the chosen business area that you've chosen to apply for. And a genuine passion for the industry and motivation for your business area. We're also looking for kind of general market and commercial awareness as well, and we look for skills, kind of leadership, analytical, time management skills, as well as attention to detail and being flexible. So all of these things are really key when thinking about the type of candidate that we want in applying for Citi. So as part of your application process, which is what I mentioned earlier, you'll have to submit your CV and also write a cover letter. So with your CV, it's important to think about when you're applying, you need to make sure you're thinking about your CV, how it reflects your relevant work experience, if you have any, or how it reflects the skills that could be transferable to a program here at Citi. Try and think about the structure of your CV and make sure it reads well, and make sure that all the relevant information is at the top. So if you don't have any relevant experience within Citi, try and make sure that your work experience within the military kind of really outlines the skills that you could bring here to Citi. So your CV should be no longer ideally than 2 pages. And it's really important to bear in mind the audience that will be reading your CV here at Citi. So we are civilians. Sometimes we don't understand a lot of military terms. So it would be great if you could have a look through your CV and maybe get a non-military person to read through it and make sure that they understand it, because it will be me and my team that will be reading them. So that would be fantastic. Also, spell check's really important. Just a small side note. Okay, so cover letter. When you're writing a cover letter, it's really important you remember just to keep it quite, 1 page. It doesn't need to be a 3 or 4 page letter. And it really just needs to explain your reasons for applying and your reasons for applying to the specific business area. So really think about the structure of the cover letter. Think about why Citi. Try and think about, why specifically you've applied for either for markets or investment banking. And also, why should Citi pick you? What makes you stand out from the crowd? What experience or what skills could you bring that maybe someone else couldn't? Make it personal. What makes you different, and really try to differentiate yourself as well. Okay, so before, if you wanted to apply, we are hosting a Citi Military Insight Day. So this will be a day that we're hosting here at Citi in our London office for any ex-military that are interested in possibly applying for the programme. So So this event will give you an understanding of the graduate programs, and will also give you a chance to meet some of our ex-military employees that have been on the programs from our different business areas. So this day will be held on the 15th of August, and you can apply via our website, via our Citi Careers portal, and the link is on the slide just there. So you just need to submit your CV and a covering letter if you'd like as well, mentioning which business area you're interested in by Monday next week, and 5 p.m. Monday next week. So this day will just give you a general idea of what it's like at Citi. You'll do some work shadowing, and you'll have some introduction sessions, and there'll be a Q&A, and then closing with drinks. So it's midday till about 7:30 p.m. So it's a really good chance to get to meet some of the ex-militaries here at Citi, and also a really great chance to network and really understand what it's like to work here at Citi. That's all from me, I think. Are there any questions at all from anybody on the line? Anything you'd like to know about applications, or any questions here for Jack about his time here at Citi?
Yeah, so thanks very much, Lucy. I think really comprehensive and lots for people to take away there, and particularly thanks to Jack for his, really good tips on how to prepare yourself and resources for, improving your knowledge and that kind of thing. So that's fantastic. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website so that you can catch up on some of these slides. If there's information on them that you want to see again, you will be able to do that. Also, the details for how to apply for the Insight Day are all on our website as well. So in terms of questions, we've had a few questions which I'll perhaps ask you to consider now. There's been questions about how many people, you've mentioned headcount and things like that for military people, but are there any fixed numbers, or does it just depend on the applicants year on year? Are there any, what kind of numbers are you talking about?
Hi, it's Jessica here. So we don't have any, it's not a set or particularly fixed number. So we're looking, for as many ex-military to apply to our programs as possible. And then it really comes down to the assessment, the assessment process. And if we feel we've seen, strong applicants, we have quite a large a full-time headcount at Citi, especially for our markets and corporate and investment banking division. So I wouldn't really have any concern about, some areas, not having a large headcount, or, am I going to be up against lots of competition? We really do encourage you to apply to any of our programs. It's not really sort of like a set amount for, ex-military. It's, really we're just looking for strong applicants, and we're looking for good potential and people who are going to do well here.
Brilliant, thank you. There's also been a question about salary levels. Obviously, are you able to share broad salary levels? Are they kind of graduate salaries, or are people's military experience, is that taken into account at all?
So everybody who would join a graduate program, so it's a set salary for a graduate program at Citi. So it's not based on experience. I can't disclose our specific salary today, but it is competitive and in line with the other investment banks. So if you do a bit of digging around on the internet, perhaps I'm sure you'll be able to find out, but I won't be able to disclose a set amount. But I would say, salaries in investment banks are very generous.
Great, thank you very much. Another question we've had is about the kind of technology type area, which wasn't highlighted as being one of the areas specifically that military people tended to go for. Do you find that you have people going into technology?
Sorry, this is Jack again. There is one chap I know of who was ex-Royal Signals, who is working within technology. So I mean, I'm not sure how it works with. I don't think there's a formal. I'm probably right in saying there's not a formal ex-military scheme into technology. However, it has been done, and there are ex-military people who have probably come from slightly more technology-based backgrounds within the military to move into those areas.
Yeah, I definitely echo what Jack just said. There's not a specific program, military program for technology business areas, but we do encourage applications for all of our business areas. It's just that the military mainly focuses on the investment banking and markets, but we do encourage for all of our graduate programs.
Yeah, I mean, if there was somebody that was interested in technology, some of the key things that technology would be looking for in an application would be, if you were perhaps interested in software development or coding, some sort of knowledge of, coding languages, or at least, there are some non-software development roles as well. But a key thing would be to really be able to demonstrate an interest in technology and have some understanding of programming languages. So anybody who did want to apply would need to be able to demonstrate that interest. But absolutely, you could apply to any of the Citi programs. And yeah, if technology is something that you're interested in, or be interested in how, technology is evolving the financial landscape, then it could be quite interesting for you.
I mean, just something I'd also add to that is, if you are really into your coding and things like that, like actually within markets, it's called MQA, which is markets quantitative analysis, and it's a really growing area of markets whereby you're utilizing automation and programming within the trading environment. And actually, it's probably the fastest growing area of trading at the moment. So if you are interested in using technology, you don't necessarily have to go into a specialist technology area. There are definitely other areas of the bank you can utilize that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone, for that. You mentioned during the interview process that there was something that you called a technical interview. People have been asking what exactly that means. If people have no previous technical knowledge, is it to demonstrate their their research, or what exactly does that mean?
It really depends from business area to business area. However, in terms of, sometimes we refer to it as a technical interview, but it may be you may have some questions which are sort of a little bit more focused on your awareness of the market and what's going on in the market, or have some basic understanding. And an interview at Citi would really look at your CV and your experience, and really tailor questions to the person that they're speaking with. So it really does vary. For some areas, there may not be like a technical element as part of the assessment centre. Some areas it might be, especially with technology, there would be more of a technical interview. I say the key things are really, though, in terms of doing well at an assessment centre, is really just being prepared for a competency-based interview, and knowing how to answer that type of interview. So you can find lots of information online on the STAR technique, and you can find lots of example competency-based interview questions. Another really good tip would be to look at Citi's values, or Citi's leadership standards, and being able to make sure that you have some examples that demonstrate some of those values, or at least relate to the values. And then in terms of more of the specific questions, or maybe slightly more technical questions, it's really just being commercially aware. So as Jack said, he gave you some tips on reading the Financial Times, and just being aware of what's going on in the market. And current affairs or current issues which may have a direct impact on perhaps the business area that you're applying to. So that sort of thing, really. And then the other aspect, really, which Lucy touched upon, was was like an individual case study presentation. So that's something that you can't really prepare for. You're given information on the day, a mixture of qualitative and quantitative information, and you're given instructions, and you prepare you create your presentation on the day. So I'd say really just being, if you did want to practice, just maybe practicing your presentation style and talking to, being able to deliver a message confidently, and also always having lots of questions prepared for your interview or assessment centre. So yeah, I mean, I guess there will be, maybe some of the questions which, as part of the assessment process, which are slightly more technical, but an interviewer, a skilled interviewer at Citi, will be able to sort of assess you based on the current experience that you have. So don't let that put you off applying at all.
Thank you very much. One other question about so if people are, if the program timings or whatever don't quite fit in with people's time frame for exiting the armed forces, are there any other lateral hiring opportunities? Do Citi hire people outside this program, or really is the main focus on the program?
I'd say we tend to, so we do, so most, if you're coming in at a junior level, most applicants will apply to the graduate program. We do have, you can come in through the lateral route, and we do have a lateral recruitment team that do manage, junior roles as well. I mean, so the key intakes are, we have July, August. Some areas there may be a January or February intake as well. Perhaps across, I know markets do, and there may be some opportunities in corporate and investment banking as well. But I think if you can join via a program, I'd say that's probably the best route into the business, and will give you the best support and the best training and exposure. If you come through the lateral route, you may not get you may not be able to join the formal training program. So if you're new into this kind of industry, I would really try to get into, through the graduate programs here.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think that, your program, from what you've been describing, there is flexibility in terms of, that there are different start dates. So hopefully that will, be able to have a wider appeal there for people and their different time frames. A final question about kind of geography. Are most of your opportunities in London, or do you have any regional opportunities within the UK, or indeed more widely across Europe and indeed globally?
We don't have any regional opportunities within the UK. It's mainly, we have a large headcount in London, but we do recruit across EMEA. So Germany, Switzerland, we have Cairo, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, really right across Europe. Also, we have Dubai, and the Middle East as well. So we do have lots of opportunities, especially across corporate and investment banking. And then London. So September, all of the vacancies are released. If you don't see what you want right away in September, some of the regional opportunities across Europe may open up slightly later, even coming into January and February. So it's good to keep an eye on the website. But the majority of the opportunities will open up first week of September.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think there's been a really brilliant webinar. There's been loads of really good tips in there and lots of good information for people. As you see on the slide in front of you, there's also an email address there, campus.queries@citi.com, where you can send in any questions that you have that you might think of later, or if you have about the programme. Otherwise, obviously, the 15th of August, a date for your diary for the Insight Day. But really, thank you very much indeed, all of you, for your time this evening. I think it's been, really valuable, and we're really grateful for you to have shared all this information with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Just to add, I think the next event, which we'll be running, it is a really good opportunity, and for you to obviously to meet lots of people at Citi, but it will also help you enhance your application. So if you meet someone that's quite interesting, that really inspires you to apply to a specific business area, you can add that into your cover letter or your CV that you've attended an event with Citi, and it will just help enhance your application a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely, and going back to Jack's strong message about networking, and how that can help you throughout your career. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much again, and good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us.